data. Just this time of year is just kind of bananas. So we'll figure it out at some point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Feel free to, if I haven't responded to your email in a day or something, you can always text me and say, hey, will you respond to this, please?
Don't worry.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Howdy, how are you?
So, hey, Bowden, you can, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Why don't you sit in one of those two seats?
Here?
Yeah. Usually our town attorney will sit right next to you. And he's kind of a squirrely fellow, but I'm sure you're up for the challenge. That's Jack Hamilton's dad who sits there. So, Kathy, have you met Bowden?
I have. Hi, Bowden.
Hey,
I sent you an email today.
yeah, I saw the email. Yeah. Thank you for that.
And Bowden, Kathy is our town clerk and Kevin is our interim town manager and public works director and IT guy. Yeah. Bowden, Kevin is our new student trustee.
Right on. Welcome.
Thank you.
So Bowden, just like we talked about, you'll feel free to just sort of
That's good.
watch and listen.
Maybe just
And
a
every
tad
once in a
the other
while,
way, so.
I might say, hey, Bowden, what do you think? But you're also welcome
Good
to
one.
raise your hand if you
Yeah.
have a thought.
Yeah.
So,
uh,
but I'll try not to
see how
put you on the
can't see
spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one there. Oh, out, out. Is it this one?
Mhm.
Can we pull it back?
Hi, Michael.
We pulled it forward last time.
Welcome.
I'm gonna try and pull it
Thank you.
that way.
No, it needs to go that way.
Okay.
Lonnie?
So maybe we can do, so it doesn't look so out of whack. Like all of them.
Mhm.
We used to be really good about everybody being here right on time, but just gonna scratch our fingernails across the chalkboard.
Erica. How was CML?
It's fantastic.
Good.
Yeah.
Fantastic, she says.
I have a little.
Don't forget to get with me to get reimbursed.
Oh, yeah, good call.
Sorry, but I couldn't pay for it. I didn't have the option to pay for it.
Yeah,
up
no,
front.
it's fine.
Worse.
I don't think so.
Hi.
Erica, Heather wanted me to bring something up
I'm
during
Erica.
trustee
Better people the
comments.
other way. Oh,
She may or may not be on Zoom.
Totally
If
not.
you could help me remember that, that would be great. I'll have to reference an email.
Yeah.
So tell me move closer.
Next is funky.
I like this seat because I don't have to strain my neck to a thing.
Oh, you can see that one.
Yeah.
You could make it so that you just see, go the other way so that you just see in Bowden and not the whole table, kind of
Hi, Marty.
the other way.
I'm gonna keep you guessing. Now let's go this side today. I saw your
Pretty,
vehicle up at Aspen, was it the airport or the,
So in the
yesterday, we
past, that
drove
was
up to
fine
Ashcroft.
because it was just
Yeah,
smart,
yeah.
but
How's your
there's,
water intake?
So why don't we
Oh,
screw
like
it
it.
up?
It's inspiring.
I think that would work.
pushing him forward.
Erica, Lonnie, and Marty, Bowden Hamilton is our new student trustee.
Awesome.
I'm adjusting.
Hi, Bode. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Of Matt and
I
I want to
was wondering, I
say
thought there
Jen.
might,
Yeah.
I thought it might be a possibility.
Yeah, you got it.
You gonna be in the office tomorrow?
Bowden,
Or Thursday?
when we get started, if I don't forget this, I'll ask you to do just a little brief intro. You
Actually,
say whatever you want,
Yeah.
just a senior or what you
Yeah.
want to study, whatever you want.
Yeah.
been a project for this school.
Really? Wow. looks way better on there than, that looks good.
We don't want to cover up.
No.
I updated tablet, okay? Which is good. How are you?
Wondrous, you?
I'm good.
Erica, did you get a chance to read Will's letter? The C-State stuff?
Sure, okay, shoot.
I won't tell anybody, I promise.
That's okay, you can. Kathy, I owe you a page. I took it from the back of your.
Okay, I'll remember that.
Okay. Miffy, when I'm an
You know
honest
what, I used
thief.
to give everybody note papers.
I know
gotta
you
Start
used to.
doing that again. Forgot all about that.
How's that look to you, Drew?
Put it in there where it was.
Except for that.
Well, I'll get
What is
rid of-
that?
That's just when the pan, where the, I want to move it, so when it pops up there.
Hi, Ben, how you doing?
It's not popping up over them.
Good.
2%
You know what I
of
mean?
about 3
We
million.
had a visitor for 4 days.
No.
And the company is nice. I'm happy to see them. Happy to
It's
see
about
them go.
60 grand. I thought
Hope they're not
30
watching
was
these,
in my.
If they are, they are.
Mean is that
You know
on
it's that.
60 grand, we're not making this percent, we're making this percent.
But-
See what I mean?
Yeah, I'm not saying
No,
anything
Jenny
behind
used
their
to
back.
keep
I'm
that
gonna say
open all
so
the
that's
time.
all.
and it didn't block
And then I'll joke
Well,
about
see, I
leftovers. and
I feel
stuff.
no
It's
urgency
only
to.
me.
3 days.
Ben Franklin, fishing company
That's it.
started snowing after 3 days.
Peace, hi Ben.
Hello.
Hey, Luis.
Hey, Ben. Ready?
How's the fundraising going?
I think they're 63 something.
Okay, that's good.
So
Ben, I know you know Bowden, but Luis Bowden Hamilton is our new student trustee.
Hi, Bowden, nice to meet you.
That Kathy?
Mike, it's like the movie theater.
Wait for Kevin to get back and we'll get started.
Because I don't have to strain my neck. I come up with that one above then.
Did anyone go to Ron's speakers presentation? I'd be curious to hear about.
First we heard about it, right?
Yeah.
It seemed like a reminder on the day of, but I think it was the first invitation on the day of.
Now, I received something a few days prior to that. but- Do you know where Kevin went?
No,
Ran away
Well,
from
he'll be
home.
right back because he knows that we're getting started. So.
All right. Heather is join us by Zoom at some point. She had another meeting tonight, conflicting meeting. Okay. It being 6:03, call the meeting to order. Kathy, will you do roll call?
Ben Baumfock.
Here.
Bonnie Kitching. Here. Dan Richardson.
Here?
Heather Henry. Marty Silverstein.
Here.
Luis Yanes.
Here.
Erica Sparhawk.
Here.
Bowden Hamilton.
Here.
Yeah, Bowden. Doing roll call already. All right, first item of business is to introduce our new student trustee, Bowden Hamilton. Everybody, Bowden?
Hi, Bowden. I'm a senior at Roaring Fork High School, and this is a position that I haven't really heard of, so I thought it'd be interesting, so.
All right,
There's no influence from your parents.
Been to-
It's for my parents now.
Way to step into the unknown.
thanks for joining us, Bowden. like we said, feel free to raise your hand or I might call on you when I think you're napping or something. All right. All right. Item number 2 is a consent agenda, and Bowden consent agenda are things that are pretty simple. And so we pile a bunch of things together and there's an opportunity for us to discuss them, but usually it's the simple stuff that we combine on there, like renewal of liquor licenses and things like that. So on the consent agenda, we have accounts payable. That's where we pay the bills. Board of Trustee minutes from September 14th, a regular meeting. Item C is a liquor license renewal for White House Pizza. Item D is resolution number 8, changing bank signatures. And item E is a memorandum of understanding with Youth Family Advisory. Any questions, comments?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Marty, seconded by Lonnie. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion passes. All right. Item number 3 are persons present not on the agenda. So is there anyone in the audience who'd like to address us on an item not on the agenda? Doc, you know the drill. Please come to the podium. Give us your name, where you're from, and
Hi, Doc Phillip or Dr. Dandelion. I live about 2 blocks from here. I've been in the valley for Carbondale 33 years, and I've been in the whole valley 53 years. I'm not an Aspenite anymore. I just want to tell you one sentence. The sentence over and over again. It's carbon dioxide. When I went from high school to college, back in the old days, we get up to 365. For 365 parts per million or whatever of carbon dioxide. Since then, it has gone up to a little over 400, and we're at 4, depending on who you read and how you read it, 415, 416, 417, 418 parts per million. They're getting worse and worse. We're not breathing well enough. And if Carbondale keeps its population down and tries to live like it used to be back in the old days, we could maybe survive longer, but with this 400 and whatever, 15 or 20 parts per million, people are going to start dying more often every day, everywhere, and especially high altitude. So I want you to consider making Carbondale, will take its population down to where it used to be. We'll drop it, half of what it is now, or get back to a few thousand people, and we can live longer, and people will come from all around the planet to live in Carbondale to have fun. So the problem is too much carbon dioxide.
Thank you, Doc.
Any questions or people that don't know carbon dioxide too well? It's
Bet we're all pretty well versed on it.
horrible and getting worse. Thank you all.
Thank you, Doc. I appreciate you taking the time to make the comments. All right, is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to address the board on an item not on the agenda? Will, I see you on Zoom.
Hi,
You go.
trustees. Thanks for having me. I didn't realize you guys were back in public again, so I'll make sure to show up in person next time.
And Will, just so you know, if you would state your name, where you're from, and feel free to take up to 3 minutes.
Thanks. Will Hodges, Carbondale resident. I'm also the local coordinator of 350 Roaring Fork. I I know that the town's investments aren't on the agenda tonight. I just wanted to strike while the iron was hot. I wanted to thank all of you for your openness, receptivity to our petition, asking you all to maybe pass along to the managers of CSAFE, to request or to consider letting them know your all's preference to not own fossil fuel investments. And we also turned in our petition with the Glenwood Springs City Council. I've reached out to Pickens County Commissioners, the town of Snowmass. I still need to reach out to the town of Newcastle, but I think I've shared with all of you, a sample letter that you all are feel free to start from. And I really don't think it would take very much to convince CSAFE to roll off those bonds next year. So thank you all.
Thank you, Will. I plan to bring that up during my comments. So if you want to hang out for a little bit, we'll have a small discussion on it, or maybe not, but anyway.
Yeah, and I will reach out to Doc Phillips. Sounds like he'd be a good volunteer for me.
All right. Thanks, Will. Matt or Michael Gorman, are you here for items not on the agenda?
They can't speak, so you just have someone raise their hand.
Oh, that's right. If Matt or Michael, if you want to speak, raise your Zoom hand.
No, I'm just, this is Matt. I'm just following along to your.
Okay. All right. How about Michael? I'm not seeing your hand up, so I'm assuming you're just here to listen for other things.
I think since we're talking about 8th Street, they're members of the Bike Ped Trail Commission, and they're probably listening in for that.
Okay, great. All right, not seeing anyone else, we will move on to trustee comments. Who's first? Erica's chomping at the bit.
As you may or may not know, I attended CML last week, which is the Colorado Municipal League that we're members of. And it was a 3-day conference at Westminster, or held in Westminster, which I'd never really hung out in or hung out there. Frankly, I told them I really didn't know the difference between all of the neighborhoods in Denver, but ended up being really cool. And I did attend a presentation about some redevelopment projects. And for anybody who grew up in the 80s and 90s in Colorado, Westminster Mall was kind of one of the first big malls where you might go shopping for a prom dress or something. And now it's the only thing remaining is JCPenney's, and all around it is affordable housing, mixed use, all LEED silver. Like, it's this really cool kind of redevelopment right on a transit corridor. So it was kind of this cool project. So I attended a presentation about it. And then I went and hung out. Well, I just went and drove around in the morning on Thursday morning and took photos and got honked at because I was taking photos out of the car. But they did some cool things, like a theater that wanted to be built. They provided some grant funds. I mean, it's not anything we would end up being able to afford to do, but to have them do it in kind of a cool retro style instead of it just being a rectangle. So they've got this really beautiful theater that looks really cool. And like, it's built in the 1920s is what it looks like, but it's a LEED certified building. So that was really neat. I presented on the climate presentation, talking about climate change and what Carbondale has been doing. And I was on the panel with the mayor from Westminster and somebody from the energy office. But the thing I wanted to bring was also that not just at this presentation, but climate was discussed during almost every concurrent session. Glenwood Springs talked all about the impacts of climate that they've been experiencing and a real resiliency. There were 2 different transportation sections. They also had a Kick the Tires event where they showed off a all electric street sweeper and a Leaf. So a Nissan Leaf fitted out to be a small police car. And just some other, so it was really prevalent over the 3 days, and it gave me a lot of hope that in our session, we had over 100 people in the room from towns all over asking us. We had questions for like 50 minutes. We gave short presentations, and then we just had tons of questions from communities all over Colorado. So it was really cool. And I came away really inspired that we've got a lot going on all over the state. So I wanted to share that inspiration because I know it can feel really overwhelming and we have a lot to do. I also attended a ward meeting in the city of North Glen, as their staff said, as a total local government nerd. I'm friends with a council member in North Glen, and it was her ward meeting Thursday night. So instead of going and schmoozing with Black Hills Energy or whoever, I went and hung out at their ward meeting. But the thing I brought back was they do a really cool little handout with their budget, with their proposed budget. And we've got some great graphics, and I like ours, but I was just thinking with our PR studio contract, it just goes through a really simple, our budget at a glance, and a super easy document for people to pick up. They handed it out at the event just to keep everybody engaged, let them know when the public hearing would be and where they could learn more. So I thought I was really impressed with this, and I thought this is something that we've all been talking about doing, and maybe this could be just a template that we use. They have a quick, like, how many staff, major capital projects that are in the budget. And I think it would just takes everything that we talk about in our packets and that you guys work so hard on, and just puts it in a really short synopsis. So I wanted to share this. I think this would be really cool for us to do as well. Yes, yeah. Nathan Roth from Norman's Memorials in Greeley specifically sought me out after my presentation so I could thank Kathy and Kevin on behalf of their efforts. They worked with you to get a headstone into the cemetery, and they said you guys are the best team they've ever worked with for a town.
I'm guessing it was probably Eric, not me.
Oh, maybe it was Eric, yes, but
Yeah, I haven't really worked with Kevin.
yeah, so maybe, yeah, so it was Eric.
Yeah.
Okay, fine, take it back from Kevin. But anyways, yeah, I know. I thought it was awesome. The other thing that was really highlighted throughout was the keynote speaker was talking about equity and the difference between equality and the movements around equality, and then diversity and the movements around there, and then equity and where we're at now and what that means for communities and what they can be doing. And it was just it was kicked off the whole CML. So I thought it was cool for such a diverse audience to also be part of that. And then I did attend Engaging Immigrant Communities panel, which had immigrant community activists presenting and just talking about the barriers that their communities have as far as engaging in some of our public processes, including the time of events. Like they might need to be at 7 p.m. instead of 5 p.m. or commissions or that kind of thing. And then one guy talked a lot about how he has been made to feel like a token on different panels or different commissions because he's asked over and over to be on different ones, even though he doesn't have any expertise in that, but because people now know him. So he just talked about how to watch out for that and to recruit folks from the immigrant communities with purpose and not just to like check a box. So he really challenged everybody listening to think about that when we're all talking about engaging immigrant communities. So I wanted to bring that back. And the other thing not CML related was the chamber had an event, and Dan did a really great job at their confluence presenting an update from the town. And I thought it was a really good short event that the chamber did. So
Thank you, Erica.
Yep.
Sounds like it was a good visit.
it was fun.
Who else? Ben?
Keep talking climate. I went to the climate portion of the comprehensive plan public meetings, which was Thursday last week, I believe. And just, I think in my role on the GCE board, they just asked me to give a brief statement about the comp plan and what it is. And it was a productive meeting. You know, I had heard a lot of buzz around it. It wasn't as well attended as I had hoped it would be. And I felt like it was mostly people who we've seen engaged in the public process and concerned about climate for a long time. Most of the environmental board members, past and present, were there. Former trustees were there, and other just concerned citizens. So it was a good process. I guess I wish it would have been I wish it would have drawn a little bit bigger crowd, but it was definitely well advertised, very well organized, and hopefully has some good direction for us. My only other comment is just, you know, the school district has a mill levy override on the ballot coming up, and they've asked for a few minutes of time on an upcoming agenda to explain that to us in a public forum and ask for our endorsement. So I wondered if that's something we would entertain.
And the October 12th agenda is packed. That's where we'll get our first budget. We'll be reviewing all of, well, not all, but the recommended town manager candidates. And I will just say that I highly doubt we'll be done by 9. So that's my concern about adding something on there, because I don't think it's as simple as everybody good with this. Yeah. I think it's going to require a little bit of discussion. So that's my concern.
Timing's tough because, you know, they'll want that around then, because then our next week would be a work session. And then the next one, I guess it wouldn't technically be too late. It'd still be before election day, but ballots will be well and truly out and about. But if that's all we got, then I would imagine they would take the last meeting of the month.
A lot of people wait till then to fill them out anyway, so maybe.
Yeah, that would be my preference, just because I know it's going to be a long meeting no matter what. Unless something changes, but that'd be my preference. So let's. Yeah.
Go with that.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll communicate that back to the folks working on the campaign.
The majority, like Erica said, the majority of people wait till the last minute.
Yeah.
Wow, it's crazy. So.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? Marty?
Briefly, I went to the Convergent Circus, which was a lot of fun. Janet, I saw you out there, and they really did a nice job. It was definitely not your routine circus. And it was a lot of fun, enjoyable evening. Other thing, KD&K is in their fall fundraising drive. If you are a member, think about renewing. If you're not a member, think about becoming a member. They also had disc golf out at Giannetti Park. That was nice to see for a couple of reasons. First of all, there are always disc golfers out there, and this was a tournament they had. So that was nice to see. The other thing is, it's nice to see, instead of everything being at Sopris Park, see Giannetti Park getting a little bit more use. So that was very nice. And yes, I was also at the Chambers Conference. I thought it was very good. Dan, you gave a very good presentation. County Commissioner was there, gave a good presentation. And they interviewed some local business owners. So I thought it was very good. Everyone agrees a major problem is finding more help. And we have businesses that are closing down their service during days of the week or hours of service because they can't find enough help. So anyone who wants a job, walk up and down Main Street, up and down 133. There are plenty of help wanted signs. That's all I got.
Thanks, Marty.
Yeah, excuse me, RWAPA, this is first thing, the partnership with CPW as the muscle boat inspection partner provider had a successful season. 19 muscle boats were intercepted and kudos were given to the inspection staff by Rudai Reservoir boaters, leading to the ANS inspection program being planned to continue through the 2022 season. Solar was installed on the inspection kiosk roof to provide internet access, which has aided the program's efficacy tremendously with its workflow. And with that, Pickens County Commissioner Greg Postman is keenly interested in the feasibility of installing a solar farm on the Rudai Reservoir surface. So one of the GCE counterparts will be reaching out to our very own Erica Sparhawk to see if GCE's solar mapping program might be applicable for this. We'll see. From RWAPA, the long overdue IGA received board approval. It was held up for a period of time as Pickens County lobbied for a stronger decision-making voice in policymaking and legislative issues, but the agreed upon rewrite ensures each member jurisdiction an equal vote on all levels, the more weighty by unanimous vote and the routine matters by quorum. So that's that. Senior Matters, the nonprofit organization, has been making a solid comeback with its updated programming that's elevated the group's visibility within the senior community on the heels of what had become a questionable direction forward. Newly appointed board members have recently been assimilated and seem right away to have begun contributing to the effort. Unfortunately, with their preferred morning meeting time, I haven't been able to attend in person during my high season, but find the minutes I follow encouraging as to their direction. And then 2 weeks ago, I attended AVLT's Kaufman Ranch Party in the pasture, as did Luis. That celebrated the completion of that property's acquisition. It was a well-done outdoor event designed to feature the attributes of the Carbondale adjacent open space and really reinforce that bedrock benefit to help restore balance to the development we're experiencing in town. Pardon me. The other takeaway I personally valued was the uncomplicated lifestyle embraced by the owners, especially visiting a bit with other well-known ranch family members who came out to support the Kaufmans for the occasion. I guess this is in the spirit that I'm sure inspired many of us to put down roots here, which is being part of a hardworking, simple, caring community that's happy with one pair of serviceable shoes that'll take them out to the landscape they love. So when I hear newcomers grouse about not being able to buy their favorite, whatever it is, underwear here locally, I would just say, be happy you don't have to stitch something together for yourself. Then lastly, from CoVenture, some very devastating news that fellow board member and board secretary attorney Rob Gavrell perished in a motorcycle accident this past week. Needless to say, with regard to the direction we heard from Mike Lowe in his presentation last week, that has been placed on hold as we prepare to join the Gravel family at Sunlight for a celebration of life this Sunday. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Lonnie.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Luis.
Yeah, thanks, Lonnie. And also, I also attended the Convergence Circus. That was a lot of fun. Big congratulations to Carbondale Arts. Just a reminder that tomorrow is the last farmers market of the season. So a big thank you to Parks and Rec staff, specifically Jamie Wall, to Katie and Kay, and also the Chamber for putting on a great farmers market season. It's as the leaves are changing, things are, that's coming to an end. So just wanted to give that big thanks. And although the hours aren't always my favorite, it's great that we have that local resource. So.
Thanks, Luis. I got a few items. Again, kudos to the Chamber for the business confluence, especially Andrea, Katie, and Heather. And I also want to make a shout out to Amy Charters, Mark Harden, and Lori Rubenstein, local business folks who spoke about various issues. And I thought Carolyn Tucker from the Colorado Workforce really presented the labor issue quite well. And there's a lot of resources on their website that I think would be useful to employers, as did Patrick Myers from the state of Colorado, provide a lot of great data. So thanks to the Chamber. It was 2 hours, well worth every minute. I thought they did a great job of making that very productive 2 hours. Our application period ended yesterday for town managers, so the public knows. We got more applications than I thought, more than 30. So that's great. And we'll begin the process of whittling those down now. But thanks to all those applicants and to Drew and staff's work of getting all those applications. As Will mentioned, he sent me a letter requesting that we divest from fossil fuels via CSAFE, and I forwarded it all onto you he sent another email saying, hey, do we want to sign a joint letter? So we may not want to consider it, but is there anybody opposed to the idea of considering a joint letter on this, or, pursuing this notion?
I guess, my only question was, there were two bonds in particular that were mentioned. And I believe they both come due within the next 12 months. And the manager, as he basically said that he would not continue to invest in fossil fuel energy bonds. So, I mean,
But was, I think, looking for municipal input to confirm that
okay,
action,
that's fine.
is what I would say.
I was just wondering about that because.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I think this is us sort of putting our money where our mouth is. So I'm supportive of it. And it's an insignificant impact financially. Okay, so I'll work with Will on that. Lastly, Heather is not on yet, and she forwarded some thoughts on basically speeding enforcement. And I don't know about you guys, but I've heard a lot of commentary from citizens this summer about speeding. Probably the most vocal one is married to Heather. She's asking Kirk to essentially, so we bought a new radar trailer, if you will. It different than our previous trailer. It's able to store data. So how many times people are speeding, by how much, what time of day, all that good stuff. But unfortunately, it arrived inoperable. So we've been waiting for it to become operable. And so really what she's requesting, Kirk, is what's the plan for that trailer? How are you going to integrate this into a traffic enforcement strategy? And then let's talk about it. So I think that's a fair request, unless does anybody have any problem with us asking Kirk to kind of give us a strategy on how he's going to use that trailer?
Well, I think on speed enforcement and traffic calming in general, just what's the strategy, give an update, and if people want to say something about it.
Well, then she says, once we have that, then it might be a good opportunity for the board to have a work session with the police department so we can weigh in on, do we want to change our strategy? Do we feel like we need to enhance enforcement, and how do we do that? But I think we wait for this first plan of attack first. But I'm not seeing anybody not have a problem with that. So I'll ask Heather to work with Kirk on getting that plan of attack. Okay, Kevin, you hearing anything that's out of whack there? She sent an email, so I'm not articulating it very well, but I'll forward it on. The first step is just telling us what the plan for the trailer is. Okay, I think that's all I have. Any other comments? Bowden, for future meetings, this would be the time where if you want to update us on anything happening at the high school or anything.
Well, I do have an update.
Great.
With homecoming coming up, we are planning on doing a big comeback with the truck rally and the Friday football game.
Okay.
So if the town is in support of that, and we're planning to do Wednesday after school, so I'm thinking traffic might be a problem with all the parents and stuff trying to pick up their children, so.
Okay, is this tomorrow or a week?
No, it's in October. It's a
Okay.
long time away, but
Okay.
just thought I'd update you guys that we're
Okay.
planning on doing a big comeback this year, so.
Okay.
That's next week.
No,
Next week.
October, it's a week of the 20th.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, it isn't coinciding with Potato Days this year.
it is not,
Because in the past it has. But,
not this year.
okay,
Okay.
gotcha.
Well, just on behalf of our police department, just behave yourself. Thanks for that update, Bowden. All right. We don't have Mark with us, so we know we don't have attorney comments. So we will move on to item number 6, recognition of service presentation to Michael Durant. Thanks for coming, Michael. Janet. We have, oftentimes we'll recognize people with kind words because they deserve it. But in Michael's case, Michael's been on the Planning and Zoning Commission for over 10 years. He was the chair for the majority of that period of time and has helped, a couple of years after he was appointed to that board, we adopted a comprehensive plan that we're now updating. He was influential and very instrumental in helping us adopt our Unified Development Code. as well as the consideration and approval of our 2017 zoning district map. So a lot of work, a lot of hours, and Michael led the town through the whole process. So tonight I have, and Janet was it? Okay.
What is it?
What's that?
I'm like, what is it? It's a puppy.
I have the honor of presenting Michael this very special award, and it's, I'm gonna do it where I can see it. Presented to Michael Durant with our deepest appreciation. I'll do that. The town of Carbondale is grateful for your integrity, vision, passion, intellect, courage, and leadership during your 10 years as Planning and Zoning Commissioner and Chair of the Commission. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Michael. All right, let me get a photo, you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, do that.
Awesome.
All right.
So truth be told,
If you wouldn't mind just going back so we can get you on the microphone, that'd be great. Somebody gets to tell you what to do.
thank you. Thank you very much. This is humbling. So two things. My big contribution to the previous comp plan was that the consultant was a knucklehead and put a field of black-eyed Susans in front of Mount Sopris. And I'm the guy that got it switched to dandelions. And so I guess that's my big contribution to the town. And as far as being chair for so long, I don't think I was chair for that long. I think I was only chair for maybe a third of the time that I served. And I guess we've come full circle here. My first chairman was Ben when I was appointed second alternate. So it's been fun. Thank you. Thank you very
I might
much.
just add a word, having served with Michael, I just feel like Dan said, we often recognize somebody with just some kind words, but you've just been a model of service to your community. You've always put the best interests of the town first. It's not just about your opinion or the loudest voice in the room. You have a real knack for helping people think through what's in the best interest of the town. And I think what you've done by saying, there's a big process coming up. Comp plan's really important, and I'm not going to be here for the whole thing. So in the best interest of the town, I'm going to step aside right now. Even the timing of that decision, you're always just putting the best interest of the town first. So our town thrives when people step forward and think of the best interest of the town first, and volunteer. I mean, all those hours are volunteer hours. Michael hasn't made a penny off of this service, so it's greatly appreciated, and it's a model of public service.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Thank you for the kind words. Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. On a different note, on a good note, last week, so the big reason for me stepping down is that I'm going on a cruise to the Southern Ocean that includes the Falklands and South George Island and Antarctica, and we'll be gone for almost a month. And it was dicey at this point because Argentina, which is our port of call, hadn't opened up. And last week, we just got the news of the COVID protocols under which Argentina will open up, and they're quite manageable. So we're going.
All right.
Got to go before you go.
Thank you, Michael.
If you want the box, we'll pass that down.
I don't know. What am I going to do with the box?
All right. Thank you. Thanks again for attending and being patient.
Sure, I get that budget paper.
Yes.
I also just want to say thank you to Janet for, making this happen, this recognition. So, thank you. Okay, item number 7 is special event liquor license for Little Blue Preschool. All right.
Yes.
Good evening, Drew Sorensen, on-site director for Little Blue Preschool, the second location for Blue Lake Preschool. First off, I want to say a thank you to everyone here, the support over the past couple of years, particularly the last 2 years in getting this project open. We're thrilled we're open. We opened in July. And so this is kind of a celebration, a thank you to the community, and a thank you to some of the key players. Our architect, Angela Lowry from Confluence Architecture, put in a massive amount of work that was all volunteer. And so that's kind of how this project happened. And so we want to celebrate. And so the event will be from 5:30 until 8. We'll be doing school tours. We'll have food on site, beer from a couple local breweries, and then halfway through the evening do kind of a thank you to all those people, a dedication of the school, and that sort of thing. And then wrap up the night with, we've got a local musician playing, face paint artists, balloon artists, all sorts of fun things for kids and families. And so it should be a good celebration, a good welcome to the community, and just kind of bring people into the school now that we can do that, which is absolutely wonderful. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you, Drew.
Yeah.
And I thought I pass Little Blue daily, and I thought you guys did a great job of bringing that project together. It looks beautiful and nice work.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And yeah, please pass the thanks on to Angela Lowry as far as design and everything goes. And so, yeah, thank you.
Great. Kathy, anything from you on this one?
Blue Lake raised my kids.
Okay.
But no, I have all the faith in Drew and company because the other people raised my kids, so
Okay.
they know what they're doing.
Since you guys aren't necessarily a regular customer for our liquor license, you feel comfortable with all the rules and regs and.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I can attest that Drew's been a manager of the Mountain Fair Cantina with me a few years. So he,
Okay.
knows how to safely serve some booze.
Okay. Any questions, Drew?
Quick. Are you selling tickets? Are you doing a raffle? Are you doing any fundraising?
Not at this event. We did have one food truck that was willing to donate all the proceeds. Unfortunately, their hood and kitchen fell apart, and so they weren't able to serve with us. They gave us a small donation, and we're going to be thanking some of our larger donors through our capital campaign, which we'll be announcing at this event as well. But this event is primarily for welcoming community. And then with the announcement of the capital campaign, our future events, we have our annual fundraiser in April. Those events will be more donation-based sort of things that we sell tickets for. And so everything will be purchased at this one.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. I'd entertain a motion.
I'd move to approve a liquor license for Little Blue Preschool on October 1st from 4 to 8 p.m.
Well, since Kathy can't second, I'll second.
Okay. Motion by Erica, seconded by Marty. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say no. Motion passes. All right. Good luck, Drew.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming down.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Item number 8 is an arm wrestling match. The fire department appeal of water meter requirement. So welcome, Michael and Rob. And and we've got Sydney Shallot, a board member on Zoom. So.
Oh, we sitting down? All right. Good evening.
Guys.
I'm not quite sure where to start.
This is Rob Goodwin.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm Rob Goodwin, Fire chief.
Fire
You know Michael Hatzig, he's one of our directors and also architect of some renown here. Well, we have questioned what we think is the need for us spending the money to put that meter and the pit and all that in, and talking with our excavator and all that, it's upwards of $30,000. And so that's, we've had a series of conversations over the last few months with different folks here, and it's kind of led us to here.
Yeah, it's a little bit of background. The new training facility, which is behind the fire headquarters building, incorporates an extension from the water line in the street to provide one hydrant on the site to assist with training. So the new training building includes live fire props, spaces for extrication and high angle rescue, and all sorts of training methodologies and evolutions that the fire department needs to keep the volunteers and paid staff current. And so when the project went in for a building permit, the request was made, or the requirement was stated by Public Works that the district provide a meter and backflow preventer for this hydrant. The hydrant is not connected to any potable water supplies or any other facilities within the building. It is simply a prop for training the firefighters on how to hook up and how to run hose, and how to pull hose through the building, and so forth. And what makes it so expensive is that we're putting the backflow preventer and meter on a 6-inch line. It took months and months and months to actually even get a meter and backflow preventer that big. And so when Rob brought this issue to the board of directors, they said, put that into some context for us. How much water do you actually intend to use? This is not a station that would normally be used for filling tenders, or it's simply for training purposes. And he ran out all the possible scenarios. And if you run the numbers, it's 20 to 25,000 gallons of water a year. I would contrast that with the fact that the town produces between 1,000 and 1,200 acre feet a year, which is 325 million gallons. Of that, anywhere from 10 to 20% is considered system water loss. I think probably they've gotten it down to in the neighborhood of 10% system losses. So we're dealing with a system that loses, and people accept losses of 32.5 million gallons a year. And we're here arguing about 25,000 gallons. It just seemed from the point of view of the board of the district that the money was better spent on the critical mission that the district provides.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. Sydney, I can't see your hands anymore, but if you wanted to add anything, raise your hand. Kevin, let me know if you see that.
Yeah, may I?
Yes, please do.
Okay. Hi, thanks, everyone. I appreciate you allowing me to come via Zoom. One thing that has just felt a little bit confusing, I suppose, is maybe a strong word, but when the town came out and did some work earlier on our already existing hydrants, there was no consideration of metering any of those. And from my very novice understanding of the watering and metering situation, this is, it feels somewhat unprecedented in that we are setting up I think we're having struggle with feeling that it's sort of coming out of left field. And even though it was part of the permitting, the cost is, as Michael mentioned, it considerably outweighs the use of water. And our training chief actually estimated that on a really good year, it'd be close to 11,000 gallons, not 25,000. And so I just think that that's worth noting. And I'm curious too about just sort of the discussions that have been had and how it is that this is where the town has decided that this type of process needs to be added to the fire department's metering.
Okay. Thank you, Sydney. Kevin, you submitted a memo to us that kind of outlined your response. Is there any highlights you want to offer?
No, not in particular, other than I think it's important for the board to understand, from my perspective, that this needs to be metered. And I would offer that I still think it needs to be metered, and seems to me kind of the decision before you is who pays for it.
Mm-hmm. And when Rob and I first talked about it, I had the same idea as the board to say, well, let's put this in context and, tell me how much water you're using. And Rob got back with me with that. And Kevin, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but essentially he said, it doesn't really matter. We need to meter all of our sources of water that are not emergency related, like a typical hydrant. And this one has the potential to be more than just an emergency hydrant that we would have, just for fighting fires and things. And that changed my perspective just so you know, Rob, since you and I haven't talked about it since then. And bottom line is, to answer your question, Sydney, is this is just now our policy that and when I say now, I mean, I would imagine long before our time, we decided to meter all of our houses so that we understood where obviously what we can charge for, but also where the system losses are. And so this is a policy decision that has been in place. I think because of the way this project came forward, my understanding was that Kevin didn't get an opportunity to say, oh, by the way, don't forget, you need this meter. It was kind of after the fact. I'm sorry it played out the way it did, but that's just the way this project evolved. So I support Kevin's recommendation that we should put a meter on it. And again, then if we support that, then it's who should pay for it. And I thought Kevin's memo did a good job of saying it would seem to make sense that the district ratepayers, taxpayers pay for this as opposed to town taxpayers. But that's the question before us. So anybody have any thoughts or questions?
I mean, maybe just a question on process, not that we can go back in time, but it helps me understand how I would think about kind of responsibility and payment and that sort of thing. Kevin, can you just explain to me, so it's that when were they told that they needed to have the meter? It was after they had submitted an initial plan, and then there's this correction letter, but before they got a building permit, they were told this. Is that right?
So the plans were submitted for building permit. We then reviewed them. I said, it needs a backflow preventer and a meter. That was put in the correction letter. Then the permit was issued.
Okay. And then building has commenced and is well underway, right? So it's not like we realized this at some unusually late point in the process and they're now having to dig it up and that's why it's costing a lot. That's not it.
Correct.
It's
They're
normal.
accurate. A 6-inch meter is expensive.
Okay.
We were trying to meet our building window with the start date had already been pushed back a couple of months, and we were trying to get it done before we had to do a bunch of winter conditions on finishing the project, costing even more money. And so, yes, you're right.
And then, I mean, maybe just to probe a little bit more here. It's connected to treated water, potable water, but then it's not connected to anything Michael was saying inside the facility. It's not connected to
There's no water. There's no water to the building.
It's another hydrant. Okay. And all the hydrants are connected to that same main water supply.
And that hydrant in itself is technically a backup supply. NFPA 1403 says when you're doing live fire, you have to have 2 water supplies, right? A backup in case your first one fails. So you would bring an engine in and run your hose lines out and do your practice, and you would have a backup supply. So that's the reason we put it in there. Now, a backup supply could simply be another engine. Doesn't have to be a hydrant. So, but that's the reason we put it in there, was to meet that.
And Kevin, just that other hydrants don't have to be metered because they're for emergency use only. And this one's not just for emergency use, it's for training use as well as.
That was the distinction in my mind, and, kind of to Sydney's question of there is a difference in my mind. What we're trying to, when they need to go put out a fire, they need to go put out a fire. We don't need to worry about metering that because it's infrequent. But in this case, the reason we didn't put a meter in when we replaced the one behind the fire station was because I had met with folks out there and we talked about this, and I didn't sense any big pushback on it. And we actually talked about not using that anymore once this one was put in, and we'd use this to fill the tenders and whatnot when they weren't in a process of emergency use. So we could get a handle on how much water is being used out there. We're not proposing to charge them. We didn't charge tap fees. It was just, we need to know how much water is being used. And to the best of my knowledge, and I'm sure I could be corrected on this from somebody that knows, this is the last non-emergency use that I'm aware of that's not metered.
In the town.
In the town, yeah.
I'll stop asking questions there, but this is a hard one. I think this is not a clear-cut case, and I think we're all on both teams here, right? We all care about the town as its institution. We all care about the fire district, and we're all members and constituents of both. If the only need for it is to document water use, I'm leaning toward thinking maybe there's another way we can do that. Maybe some sort of record keeping at the fire station or something. I mean, a $30,000 cost, whether the town pays it or they pay it, or we're all paying it, right? So it's kind of a little bit of a shell game. And if, I don't know, I'm leaning toward saying that they don't have to do it if the only reason, I thought maybe there was another reason and a charge for it or something like that. But if it's just for our accounting of where the water goes, and I mean, do you have any response to Michael's analysis of it's this small, like, do we really lose that much a year in the millions?
The only response, and this doesn't mean that I don't necessarily agree, is it's kind of the death by 1,000 cuts. The better handle we have on what water's being used in this town, the more it can direct us towards leaks in our system that can reduce that number. And that I think it's important.
Thanks.
Other thoughts?
I have a question, if that's okay. It's Sydney online again.
Sure.
If the town is sort of setting somewhat of a new policy in place around escape water, what are the other plans throughout the infrastructure to do that besides this?
There's a lot of things that we do to monitor and track that. And I don't think that's, you're just gonna have to trust me on that. I don't think this is the time to get into that, but you just have to trust us that we do a lot to trace water leakage. And I wouldn't say this is a new policy. Like Kevin said, we've been moving towards metering probably for more than 5 years.
Okay.
And like Kevin said, this is the last one that we know of to still meter.
And to the point about not getting billed, how does that work? If my understanding, and I might be way off, is that we can't commit this board to waiving a fee and then expect the next board to continue with that waive. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the case for everything we do.
So that feels like a bit of a tenuous situation. Like if the town is willing to waive the fee, does that mean the department has to come back in front of the town every, new election cycle? Or what's sort of the thought process behind not charging if you're going to go ahead and meter it?
So when you say fee, you mean water usage charges?
Yeah, correct. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's been a longstanding agreement. I don't know, Michael, how long that dates back. You may know better than us, but I don't know what to tell you other than we've never talked about changing that agreement. And for us, metering the water is not about teeing up a change in charges. It's more understanding where our water is being used.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it- Go ahead, Michael.
If you've got board members, go ahead.
I'm not seeing anybody too eager to chime in, so go for it.
Well, I mean, I certainly appreciate Kevin's position as a policy statement. I just keep going back to two things. One, the characterization of this as non-emergency is a little bit of a stretch. Having fully trained and competent firefighters, it runs continuously from training into the incident to getting to understand how they fight a fire. So this isn't sort of optional to that intention. And the second is that to hang up on policy for such a vanishingly small amount of water seems to be getting our priorities confused. So those are 2 points I would make, and I certainly appreciate you hearing us on this. And I understand Kevin and Mark being in the position they're in because, you know, as defenders of the system and being able to say to other parties, we don't make exceptions and so forth. I certainly understand that. But in this case, in representing the board of the district, we'd rather spend our money other places.
And just quickly to respond to that, at one point in my career, I was like the Lorax and I speak for the trees, but oftentimes I feel like I speak for water and wastewater systems now. And I think there's a lot of different expenses that you could look at in a water system that is there for redundancy or for monitoring that you could say is not critical, but it contributes to the overall performance of a system that has to work well. And so I hear you, Michael, but I also think that this is part of our overall system and everything is expensive when you touch a water system. And this is one of those components. So that's why I feel the way I do. But Bowden.
I mean, I can see both sides of the argument here, but I think getting better trained firefighters overcomes the cost. Like, I would rather have better trained firefighters than 30,000, you know.
The metering water.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for winning. Erica.
I just wanted to clarify the costs. And so so the meter itself is 12,000 and then installing it is 12 to 15?
Yes.
The labor?
Meter, a backflow preventer, excavating it, putting in the vault, all that stuff is between 25 and 30, according to our excavating contract.
Okay.
And that includes the meter. Yeah.
Well, and the only thing I wanted to add is, I know you guys said 25,000 and then 25,000 gallons might be used.
I can clear that up. That was a math error on my part our part that Michael and I figured out today. If you look at what would be on your 45 of 191, if you look at the first instance of us calculating an in-house monthly live fire training, and it goes through approximately 850 to 1,000 gallons for those evolutions. That's per month. That's not per annum. So it'd be another 10. So we're looking at 20,000 gallons to be accurate. We discovered that today.
Okay. And it sounds like these numbers though are also just based on assuming that you do 4 trainings a year.
Yeah, if we did all the
Looking
live
closer.
fire trainings, right? Live fire is a piece of our training puzzle, right? We have 4 ambulances, we do 65 to 70% EMS, and this building is part of that. It is a true multi-function building. There's not really one like it in the state.
Yeah.
And it's to do EMS, rescue. There's a lot of fire training that goes on that is not burning, right? There's a whole bunch of other stuff that we do in there.
Yep.
And then there's the live fire portion, and that's all I'm addressing here. And when we do a live fire attack, in a training or even a fire, if it works right, you go in, the fire's burning, and you have that nozzle. Like I said, it'll do 125 gallons a minute.
you apply it correctly. It's only a matter of seconds that it's on, and that's how we did the calculation. They're not down to the gallon, but they're pretty close.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think, because I remember getting the great presentation on this facility.
Yep.
Is that we also don't know, kind of like, Sydney was bringing up trust going forward in the future. You guys might end up doing more trainings because
it's true.
It's such an awesome facility. Like if it's unique in the state, it could be used a lot more. So I can
Hope we
see
do a lot
where,
of trainings.
yeah. So I can see where our staff wants to meter that water because it is different than, fighting the fire, which you guys did an awesome job over on Crystal Circle the other day. And I feel like that's the first time I've seen, there's been a fire in town in a long time. And so I see the differences there. There's this awesome training facility that we're getting in Carbondale that we totally support. And you've got some estimates here, but that could grow in usage. So I can see both sides. And I think we can come up with a solution. We have been doing a lot of work on getting systems in place to monitor even our ditch water, tracking our water more carefully. So I think maybe we split it.
Getting down close to time.
Lonnie was
Lonnie and then
saying
Marty.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, actually, Erica, you're saying about splitting the baby. And that's something where I see both sides. I see the need to have it be metered. I understand the impact on your budget. So the principle of metering it and stuff, I think it's important that we maintain that. No one's doubting the good work that you gentlemen and ladies do, or the need for the training facility. And I understand you're trying to keep your budget as lean and mean as we are our budget. So that's why I would advocate for splitting the baby and splitting the cost. But with the principle that we have the metering.
Go ahead, Luis.
Yeah, I was curious about, Kevin, you might know this, other town resources, say, like the pool, how we handle that in terms of amount of water usage. And that's obviously a cost that the town undertakes, but I'm just curious in terms of metering.
All of our town facilities have meters, including the irrigation systems that are off of the potable water system.
Okay. I mean, I was leaning towards what Erica was saying in terms of splitting the cost as well. I was just curious about that.
Other thoughts?
I just wonder if there's any way to do anything in kind, like do we have the capacity to do any of the excavation or install or anything like that in-house?
I'll let these guys opine as well, but I think now that they have a contractor on board, that could get pretty dicey
Yeah,
from
I
a
think-
liability perspective.
We're under contract with them, so that could be difficult.
How does this compare? I mean, what's the overall cost of this project? I'm just wondering if this is a drop in the bucket. I know it's a big number.
1.2 million.
1.2 million.
Lonnie, any thoughts?
My thought is that this board has expressed a lot of sensitivity around first responder training, in particular the PD most recently. So in that case, for occasional first response training, I would view it as a special use training tool and an enhancement. And I would prefer to view it in that way rather than the strict metering rules in this case.
So tell me what that means.
That means that we should waive that fee.
So now there's a couple different opinions. There's a few, and I would entertain a motion.
Okay. Make a motion that we go ahead with the metering. Town of Carbondale splits the cost with the fire district.
As determined by what? Like in terms of the cost, it sounds like the cost is not exactly fixed right now, so.
Not to exceed 30,000.
As an overall project cost.
Right.
So effectively, we would be charging the fire district up to 15, I'm trying to think of the words, up to $15,000. Right?
Yeah, 50% of the cost up to 15,000.
Would we be charging? I mean, they get it done, right? We don't do it.
Well, yeah, so I guess, so Yeah, I was thinking that's a good point. We would be coming out of pocket $15,000.
Yeah, we'd have to budget for it in our
We
next.
have to budget $15,000 that we would contribute up to the cost of $30,000 for metering the water.
So we would be reimbursing them up to $15,000.
Correct.
Is there a second on that?
Second.
Okay. Any further deliberation? Ben, you've got a,
I mean, I'm just trying to think of the logic behind it all and why we would pay half of that. I mean, I would think of it differently, maybe if this had been noticed really late in the process or something like that, but not. Just having a hard time with the concept.
a shot. Motion by Marty, seconded by Erica. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion fails. Is there another motion? Okay. I'm not seeing another motion and, if we don't take any action, it just staff recommendation stands. I'm happy to entertain another motion, but it doesn't sound like there's support.
I mean, let me, I would waive this requirement on the basis of sort of Lonnie's idea, it'd be the only metered hydrant in town, and it's directly related to emergency use. It would be used more than just emergencies, but the fact that it's our only hydrant that's planned to be metered, I would move that we waive the requirement.
I have a question on that.
Wow. Go ahead, Marty.
So you're saying to waive the requirement for the metering?
That's what they're asking for.
No, they're asking us to waive the fee for the requirement.
We're asking that you waive the requirement that we install the meter backflow preventer in it and associated.
Yeah, there's no fee
Site.
here.
Don't
This is
you-
just the cost of the hardware.
Because I thought you said it took a long time to get here. You don't have the equipment yet?
We have it.
I think the meter just showed up. You guys have it.
We'd rather send it back.
Okay. Lonnie, had you supported that other motion, we would get metering, but we'd be splitting the cost.
Right.
So now,
I would second Ben's motion to waive the metering.
okay, there's a motion and a second to waive the metering requirement, so we wouldn't have anything. Motion by Ben, seconded by Lonnie. All those in favor say aye.
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 You gotta vote for your own
I
second.
know. We're 2 votes.
Okay. So that tells me there's support to have the meter in place. And there's mixed support, how much the town pays and the fire district pays. But there's not a majority either way. So if we don't take any action, then we stays in place. And Lonnie, I'm just trying to be logical here, but the motion that, I don't even remember who made it.
Marty.
Marty made it,
Yeah.
would get you closer to your goal. And I don't know Robert's Rules of Orders well enough if we could entertain the same motion twice or not, but
Okay, I can make a motion again.
so I'm not trying to twist your arm, Lonnie, but I'm also trying
One
to,
vote.
I'm trying to go with the intent of the board. I'm understanding that there's close to a majority, and I wanted to make sure am I thinking about it the same way you were thinking about it? So,
Okay, so let's review. What actually is being purchased here besides the metering? So the hardware has already been onboarded, right? It's in hand.
Yes.
Hardware is in hand. So the $30,000 that we would be splitting is for, lay it out again.
the
That hardware and for the installation of it.
Okay, so the hardware and the installation, the metering aside.
Meters included in the
The
hardware.
meter's in it.
Okay, the meter's in it. So what is the ongoing expense that we're having heartburn over?
We didn't have heartburn over that.
Okay, so there's no heartburn over an ongoing expense associated with the monthly metering.
Now, you guys said you weren't gonna bill us.
Right.
So
Okay,
Kevin
so,
said that.
Just the cost of it's the meter itself and the installation of that meter, and it's a one-time thing.
okay, one and done. Okay. So if we split the cost on that, that would be our contribution towards the education, the training of our first responders, right? If we split the cost of that. Okay, I can live with that.
Marty?
I'd like to make a motion that we split, Kevin first.
I'm going out on a limb here, but I think typically with motions that fail, if you want to relook at them, it needs to be somebody who didn't vote for it.
Be me.
Okay. Thank you,
Um,
Kevin.
Point of order taken.
Done.
With your Robert Rules of Order there.
It's the motion. Okay, so I would move to split the cost of the backflow, what is it, the meter and the installation with the fire district in order to promote the first responder training aspect of the occasional use of this particular hydrant.
Can I suggest a reframing that we would reimburse the fire district up to 50% or $15,000, whichever is less?
Oh, okay, so that's a pass through from us, right?
Is that the right word?
It's their project. They would pay the contractor, and if you vote it, or if you make this motion and it passes, we would reimburse them half of the cost up to $15,000.
Okay, that's the motion.
Second.
Okay, are we in line with that motion? Robert? All right, motion by Lonnie, seconded by Marty. All those in favor say aye.
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 Wait a second.
Wait, can we
Sorry.
do a roll?
Oops, so I'm going to call roll, please. Luis Yanis,
Aye.
Ben Baumfock,
No.
Lonnie Kitching,
Aye.
Dan Richardson,
No?
Erica Sparhawk,
Yes.
Marty Silverstein,
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Thank you very much. for
All
your
right.
time. Because this was not in the original documents, we have complete documentation from the contractor on the added costs. So we can provide you with a line item breakdown of all those expenses.
Okay, great. Thanks for coming down. Thanks, Sydney, for joining us.
Thank you all.
Okay. 17, what's next? Let's keep rolling with item number nine. Resolution number 9, series of 2021, amending Municipal Code Appendix A fee schedule. Kevin?
Yes. So this item actually covers two things that are outside of our normal fee schedule update, which is typically done toward the end of the year. So the rates go into effect in January. The first is our waste hauling rate. And the reason that we're doing that is because the way the contract was set up, it was on the anniversary of the service startup date, which is October 1st is when those rates go into place. And then with the RV park, we need to get those rates established because in the middle of October, we start taking reservations on that system and we need to have the updated rates in. So when people make reservations, they know what they'll be expected to pay. So starting with the waste hauling rates, I'm not going to go into great detail. It was in the memo, but the CPIU, which is one of the things we use to determine the potential rate increase for August of this year, was 5%. The way the contract is set up, the contract caps just the CPIU at 4% if it's over that. So Mountain Waste has asked for the 4% that's in the contract. In addition to that, there's another piece of the contract, which I put in here verbatim, which is talking about uncontrollable costs. And fuel prices are specifically listed in there. And they've asked for an additional adjustment related to fuel prices. Speaking to that just a little bit, the way that it's proposed in here, I think is fair, because it goes back and it looks at what was the fuel cost in 2019 when we started this contract, because what fuel prices did is they actually were higher in 19, dropped like a rock last year, and then climbed back up fairly substantially. So if you just looked at it year over year, it would be a much larger proposed increase. But we talked about it a little bit, and it seems to be equitable to go back to where it was when they bid on the contract and then look at what it is now. And then in the future, we can look at year over year increases. But you can't do that when you've gone 2 years. You can't just look at one of them, in my opinion. So overall, that brings the request to 4.605%, which is still less than the actual CPIU, even though that shouldn't necessarily be a consideration based on the contract language. Any questions about the waste hauling piece of this?
I'm not seeing any.
Any questions for Eric about the RV park?
Okay. Looking
No.
to see where there's a motion. I don't know if there
Was on page 48.
Oh, here we got it. I move to adopt resolution number 9, series of 2021, updating Appendix A, of the municipal code. Is that right? Okay.
Second.
All right. Any other questions? Motion by Luis, seconded by Erica. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say no. Motion passes. Thank you, Kevin. Thanks, Eric. Great job speaking tonight.
Tell us not to forget potato days, right?
Potato days, we need some help. So if anybody's available, on Saturday, from 9 to about 2, we could use your help. So,
I'll be there.
awesome. Thanks.
Okay.
On the water.
So let's take a 6-minute break. We'll adjourn and come back and talk budget. Sorry, Renee, gotta wait a little bit longer. Whew.
It's having just a couple, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very healthy.
It's boring if it's 6 all the time.
Excuse me. How's everything? To you?
Okay, we had company over the weekend, did all those touristy things. We went out to Mobile, we went up Rudai, we went to Ashcroft.
Nice.
We were happy to have the company. We were happy to have them leave.
Trustee.
Yeah. It is.
So it's a new
It's a
position
little.
for city council. It's really the car.
Meeting waiting for the time. She had a great
And I'm also.
She did do a good enough job.
You're here to get what? You're like a young person's person.
Oh, no, it was good.
Very
Great
cool.
time. He just goes, I get the best 5 off this time.
Weird, no one's wearing
It's only
face
seems
masks.
to be not move your map.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
another guest coming
I
Friday.
recently went to Hawaii and everyone there
She's
is
only
like
here for 1 day.
very strict face mask, even for
Well,
vaccinated
she gets to be
people.
here for First Friday.
Let's do it again?
Yeah.
I'm gonna see if I can make time to volunteer for potato days for a
Yeah.
couple of hours.
There's a rack over there. What year do you graduate?
What?
When do you graduate?
May 2020.
I go, I know you
This
do.
May?
honey.
This May, yeah.
Cool. Where are you
I
gonna
should
go to
be
school?
prepared for.
I don't know
Quarter
yet, but I
enough
did get
to do
accepted
that.
to
To where?
Embry-Riddle,
Oh,
Jackson,
cool.
Arizona.
Very cool. Very
I'm the-
cool.
I think
Well,
I'm the
let me
first
check
one.
in with Heather. I don't know if she's.
What? Very cool. Are you, which school are you going to right now?
Lawrence High School.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. And is your dad
Yeah.
still commuting to Denver for work?
No, he's been here.
Okay,
He's been
Thanks.
here, although he's supposed to be going back to the office soon. I don't know when. The
Yeah.
company's been here, So.
I have a very, very good friend that I actually went to college with, and he's an amazing designer. He's working for the North Face, and he's working in the design department. I've been trying to get him and your dad together because he wants to live here and then commute to Denver, just kind of like your dad does. He's like, and I sent him your dad's contact, but yeah, I don't know. Mm. Cool. Well, it's cool to see a young face in the crowd. So I taught Bowden how to snowboard. Oh, like
Very cool.
a long time ago.
Very cool.
Over probably what, 3-4 years, maybe?
A couple
no,
seasons,
A couple
yeah.
seasons ago, yeah.
Yeah.
3-4 years ago. I don't know.
Yeah, I was your snowboard coach. Which I'm not doing anymore, and that's okay. It's hard to coach when you have your own kids. Like you have less patience for other people's kids.
Right.
And less time.
Less time.
I realized when I was like, okay, we're gonna have a silent contest on the chairlift right up.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, who can be silent the longest is gonna win. And I was like, okay, maybe it's time for me not to coach anymore. Maybe it's time for me to relinquish
Yeah.
those duties, right?
Right. That's really funny. Yeah, we haven't been getting big audiences, so.
Well, you're here. It's
Feels
on
okay.
Main Street.
Awesome.
Like always.
Yes, no, it's good.
We'll do not this week, next week. Gordon, you'll have to spell your dad right for me.
I will, yeah.
Definitely needs to say that.
I will.
Anyone's right.
Yeah.
By the way.
I don't know. But
All righty. Still feels empty even though everybody's here. Bring the meeting back to order, maybe because nobody wanted to sit next to me.
I want to make sure Bowden felt comfortable.
Okay, oh, so it looks like Heather is in the Zoom. I just don't see her name on there, so. Okay, moving on to item number 10, 2022 budget. Discuss process, review revenue projections, year-to-date financials, fund balance review. So this was a special request that we asked Renee to give us some information sooner than normal. So thank you for coming, Renee.
Not a problem. Revenues are always fun to talk about. We're looking for a little bit clearer direction on our revenues for the budget that will be presented to you October 12th. Historically, we've always budgeted our revenues very, very conservatively, just in case anything happens, which we've proven it can. And our expenditures, we always budget realistically. So quite often we end up after the audit where we have more in our fund balance than we projected through our budget. That has served us very, very well over the past years. And we've been able to grow our savings account. So when something does come up, we're financially able to deal with it and move forward. So in looking at your revenues, of course, sales tax, our major revenue source. 71.5% of our general fund revenue comes from the transfer from the sales tax fund. Of that transfer, 93% of it is sales tax. The rest of it is made up from use tax on building permits and from the Garfield motor vehicle use tax. So budgeting our revenues is incredibly important. We're looking at going through the end of this year at 30% up per month. That's over last year. Last year was an unusual year. So looking into next year, I'm already starting to see some of those revenues to leveling off. I'm not sure if they can't get inventory. I'm not sure what's occurring, but we are starting to see the leveling off of our sales tax. It's going to be up. So we were looking at doing a 5% for next year for our budgeting purpose. Basically, even though we're saying this year is way up, it's 30%, it's over a really unusual year. So if we take this year, which is normal, and then do a 5%, I think that's a realistic way to look at it for next year for 2022.
So Renee, I think this is a really important point because people will look back on this and say, wow, what a big year. What you're saying is you think this year, it's fair to say that it's close to the new normal. And so next year we're projecting an additional 5% over 2021, which you're saying is a new normal because of the way we collect online sales tax and other things.
Other things too, but online has really contributed to it also.
Okay.
Yeah, but am I detecting some reservation? Because there are backlogs of people being able to get things that they order. Shelves aren't as stocked as they would normally be.
I'm hearing more of that than I'm seeing. So that's why I think the 5% is a cautious way to do it and realistic. And we can always readjust as we go through next year.
And we've always taken a cautious and realistic approach, and it's better to have budget a little less and get more in revenues than to budget too high and not have enough revenues.
And then budget your expenditures to fit the revenue.
Okay, thank you.
Clarify one other thing, Renee. You said 2020 was an unusual year, but if I remember correctly, we actually came in a little over projected revenue that year.
Just a little bit.
But it wasn't an unusual year in the sense that we collected way less, and now to get 30% above that takes us back to normal. We actually continued on kind of our projected 5% or so growth every year, even in 2020.
But it was in industries that we weren't prepared for.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
So we're looking at direction, and if anybody has a better idea than the 5% for next year, please let me know.
So Renee, just I was talking to Kevin about this morning. I often will benchmark this against rafted jurisdictions because we get that earlier because they're looking at all the municipalities, and that range for various reasons. I wouldn't say this reflects economic outlook, but it was -5% all the way up to 14% that member jurisdictions were projecting, which isn't a whole lot of guidance, as Kevin pointed out. That means we're pretty much in the middle, but is the 5% based on maybe other communities, or can you give me a little bit more background on how you came to 5%?
Various things, Dan. Canvassing other areas and what they're looking at the state and what they're projecting. 5% just was a fairly good number, as Ben pointed out. We've historically done about a 5% increase. That's what it came in.
Okay.
So that's why we would like to stick with the 5%.
Okay. And it sounds like on the state level, the new legislation is continuing to absorb new online retailers. So while it's unlikely to go up much, there is the chance for it to still go up a little bit. But it's interesting to hear that things are starting to level off. But okay.
The state sales tax, SUTs they call it, is still evolving. We're still having a little pushback. I'm on the state committee for that. There's still some pushback, but it's becoming less. Retailers are becoming very accustomed that they're going to have to pay the sales tax, and they're doing so. We've been fortunate also in signing contracts with HomeAway, VRBO, and so that's coming online. People who were hesitant before now no longer have a choice. That platform's there and it's collecting from them. So we're seeing lots of different revenues coming in due to the sales tax that we haven't seen before.
Okay. Thank you, Renee.
So does everybody feel comfortable with that 5% projection for next year? Okay. All right. So that October 12th, we'll be using that number. Other things to look for in the revenues. The road and bridge probably will continue at 9,000. Garfield County put in that mill levy. So that's going to continue to be at that $9,000 level. We'll no longer see the $90,000 level coming in on that. Building permits and plan check fees. We've had most of the large amounts come in the past year or two. They're expecting smaller ones next year. So that's being scaled back a bit too. You have charts in your packet concerning the mineral lease and severance. It's up over last year, but it's down from 2019. Wastewater fees will go up 5%. Water fees, the base fee will go up 7.5%. The usage will go up 5%. Trash will go up 6%. And the rec fund, we're assuming next year will turn to a normal year. They did lose some revenue. We'll be transferring some money from the feds that comes in to cover some of that lost revenue and make up their fund balance. But we are expecting 2022 to return more to normal on our entrance fees, especially. Mm-hmm. So this weekend will be the beginning of a new month. I'll be finalizing September. So we'll have 9 solid months to do our projections with. So your October 12th budget will have the solid 9 months with all of the revenues through the end of September. We'll have a much better feel for what we can expect for the next 3 months in our projections for our fund balance. You have a fund balance in your packet for 2021. And let's see, let's also talk a few of the extra expenditures that you've been talking about. One of them I did include in the budget that you have in your packet. That was the $50,000 that extra that Ben was proposing for the housing fund. So that was in there. The items that were not in there include the chamber, $10,000 more than the 40, only 40 is in this budget. So the chamber was asking for an extra $10,000, taking them up to $50,000. Carbondale Arts was asking for 15 instead of 10 that is in the budget. CoVenture was asking for 20. We had 0 for them in the budget. CPAC was asking for an extra $2,250. That's not in the budget. we heard an electric mower for the rec department, parks department for $24,000. We'll be hopefully hiring a municipal advisor, but that shouldn't cost us anything unless we go for the bond issue. So we won't have a feel for that until we go for the bond issue on that. There was a request for a sidewalk increase of $25,000 to the budget. The water fund now has an increase for this year of $15,000 to help pay for a meter and backflow. And there was a request for an ATV of $30,000 for an ATV with tracks on it for up at the Nettle Creek area. So those are items that are not in the budget at this time. Do you want them included in that budget? Right now, without those in there, we are looking at approximately using reserves with the transfer to the capital construction fund of 2.4 million for various projects that we have coming online, plus the regular 500,000 to the capital of going in the hole, approximately 1.8 million. Ooh. I heard that, Lonnie.
You packed a lot in there.
Packed a lot in there, but of that, remember that transfer of 2.4 includes some acquisitions and other
Allowance
things.
for acquisition, yep.
So, and that's why we have savings. So what items are on here that you want to see included or you want to leave out at this time?
Dan, can I ask a
Yep.
framing question first? So when we start off by saying we're up 30% over last year
For sales tax.
for sales tax, hooray, right? But it's our main source. And then you listed some things that add up to, do you know what all those add up to? Those, I didn't know if you'd.
About 65,000.
About 65,000. That's something, but it's not a huge amount. That's less than 1% of the total budget. And then even leaving out a potential property acquisition or hundreds of thousands of dollars beyond projected revenues and what you're suggesting there. Like you just said, we're at $1.8 million in the hole.
That's for next year. what
Right.
We're projecting. For this year, we will put more money into that savings.
Okay.
Okay.
But if you look at next year as 35% over last year, because it was 30% up this year and 5% more, like we've got all this extra revenue. My question is, I don't see where it's going in here, where we've increased all these things. That it's not going into all just that 65,000 in extras that aren't in here, that like in the presented draft budget, it's all spent and then some, and I'm just not following.
You've got to remember, this year is where you're seeing that 30% increase. That's going to bring your fund balance up to the 9.2 that you're starting January 1st with. The expenditures and projected revenue for next year. And that's when we take the 1.8 out of savings.
So we're essentially using some of this year's savings to pay for something for next year.
Could, I'm wondering, Heather has a hand up, so I'm gonna let Heather ask her question.
I mean, it's okay to keep going on that track, Dan, because mine was jumping subjects.
So
yeah.
maybe it would help clarify if, and maybe it's too premature to ask this question, probably is because we're talking about revenue, but if we put property acquisition to the side, how much is our expenses projected to increase from 2021 to 2022? And that would help explain why we're eating up this extra tax revenue.
Yeah, because it seems like we're budgeting for a whole lot more expenses just within general kind of operations. And
Okay,
it's
that
just-
1.8, your transfer of that includes the 2.4 transfer of that transfer, only of that 2.5, only 500 is for our regular capital expenditures. Does that help without pointing projects out?
I might just toss in there that I get where you're coming from, Ben. And that part of the discussion is going to happen on the 12th when we start talking about the detailed expenditures. We were talking tonight about revenue projections and then also fund balances. And we will definitely provide more detail at that time, but you wouldn't even see it in this packet other than just in the numbers.
The other, I never was able to complete this thought or this analysis really is we like 75% and we've kept that threshold. Is our general fund really increasing so much? Or is there kind of an artificial increase in 2022 because of capital expenditures? And therefore 75% would be less than that. Again, I think that's an October 12th discussion. But anyway, I can't believe I'm saying that, but.
Can I toss in one more thing that might clarify things for Ben? What Renee was saying is that there's about $1.9 million of one-time expenditures that are included in what you're seeing here, and we're going 1.8 into deficit spending.
And we brought in how much more than we've spent this year? 1 point something, I would imagine.
We'll bring in close to 1 million this year, estimated.
Over what we had budgeted.
No, just actual expected revenues, less expected expenditures.
Okay.
Okay.
Heather.
So Renee, quickly on like clarifying what's in the budget and what's not. The discussion around a new like plan tech and then creating staffing, like an opening for John to take on some of the housing, et cetera. That plan tech staff is in the budget, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then when you said earlier, when Ben was talking about an additional 50,000 to kind of in the housing fund, that is in the budget.
Right. The transfer of 100,000 to the housing fund is in the budget.
Okay. So the list that you that you kind of just went through with like an additional amount for chamber, et cetera, it's just the 65,000 approximately that is not currently in the budget.
Correct.
Which according to my back of the napkin sketch is about 1% of our sales tax revenue. So if we said project 6% instead of 5%, we'd be in the same place if we added those things.
There you go.
Well, I'm comfortable with having those different line items added. That's the things that you listed. I missed the discussion last week, but where I think a lot of those things were brought up, but.
Yeah, I think the discussion last week was, it seemed like there was majority of support for housing. And there seemed to be support for housing over these other things. And again, we don't have to make that final decision tonight. It seems like but Renee would love further guidance.
And I feel like we might as well give guidance on those, right? Like, I don't think we're going to get any more information that'll help us.
Yep. So the chamber, remember, Jay already put in another $10,000 for them. So they're already getting a 50% increase. And so this extra 10% would be 100% increase, a doubling of what they're getting. I'm trusting Jay on that one and feel like that is fair. While I think co-venture is doing great things, I still struggle. It must not be that much of a need for him to sort of for Michael to kind of throw it in at the end of his presentation. And it just doesn't feel like, it just didn't strike me as, wow, this is necessary. So I kind of struggled with that one. And I didn't understand the creative district was $5,000, that we already had 10 in there. So they're requesting 15, but 10 was already in the budget. That's what I understood.
Is that right? Because I thought there was some difference between the creative district's ask and Carbondale Arts ask. Are there two separate things or is it one thing? It's one thing and it's
They have a
15.
community grant asking.
So Carbondale Arts has a community
Yeah, I
grant.
don't know what it is, but probably $5,000. Most of them are 5.
Separate.
It's creative district.
Well,
So-
then, I mean, I'm happy to adjust it then. Yeah, because I did miss the discussion last week. And I'm comfortable with the chamber staying at 40. Then.
Okay. Anybody feel differently about chamber?
So going with Jay's recommendation, which is a $10,000 increase over last year, just not the full $20,000 increase they're asking for. That makes sense to me.
And that includes the 10 for the first Fridays, right? That's separate. Okay.
Yep. How about co-venture?
I feel like we should support them at some level because they are continuing to provide this service with the Back to Work initiative and helping businesses find employees. And that's what everybody's talking about at this summit and all that. I don't think we should support them at the $20,000 level. We committed to that for 3 years and we've passed that. But since they didn't go through the community grant process, which is I think where we need to direct them in future, I'd support like a $5,000 contribution. I think it's important that they have the town of Carbondale support as long as they're based here. They've got Garfield County support. And I just think we supported them this long. I think $5,000 would be something.
Here's my only issue with that. They're speaking about moving their presence from Main Street to maybe Third Street Center. Correct?
Well, they were talking about changing their business model away from co-working and toward just incubation and acceleration support.
Right, but they're speaking about giving up the Main Street site.
I think so if the co-working doesn't continue to happen.
I mean, I could go along with the 5,000. We gave them 25 the first year and 20 the next 2 years. So I think we've been more than supportive. And my support is waning at this point.
Well, I certainly agree with Ben that I think the organization is clearly benefiting Carbondale. I struggle with the process. But in these, I would hate, on behalf of the businesses, I feel like it, supporting them at some level, like the $5,000 is worth it for me.
Yeah, and if the outcome is to benefit the total group of businesses by increasing the employment level, if they're successful with their program, then that's a bigger benefit to the town as well as to the valley. So it would be, I think, a worthwhile investment to give them some seed money to get that program going.
Okay.
I could agree to the 5,000.
Okay.
Right.
Creative district.
I think 10,000 is more than adequate.
Heather also still has her hand up. I don't
Oh,
know if
yeah.
she's-
Thank you. Heather?
Thanks. I mean, it is a legacy hand, but I'll weigh in just really quickly. I support the co-venture on that lower amount. I guess I'm also wondering if it makes sense now for them to kind of flip after this year into our community grant program, right? So if we were kind of incubating them for the first 3 years in a larger partnership level, now we're only at 5,000, that just feels a little different in terms of the partnership. And that may mean we don't have a seat on their board anymore or whatever that is. But I don't know. It's a little strange to have them at the same elevated point, I guess, versus just community grant at that 5,000. So I agree with that. The creative district, I think I support them at the 10,000. I'm wavering on that one. I mean, I think that they have, between Carbondale Arts and the Creative District, it's just a really robust set of services that I guess they bring to Carbondale. Between existing businesses and tourists and connections with the state and, you know, they're putting together the ability to maybe even go after money for affordable housing. Like, I just think that's a bit of a multifaceted powerhouse that I tend to always be pretty supportive of.
I'm sorry, Renee, if you just clarified this, but is it 5 or 10?
Carbondale Arts,
Yeah, Creative District. Yep.
10. What we have in the budget now, they were asking for 15.
Okay, so we're talking about the delta of 5,000.
If we're going to include that extra,
Right.
yes.
Okay.
I would just go with the 10 that's in the budget. That seems reasonable. And if Carbondale Arts has a separate grant under the community grants, and then I think this is another one where we need to funnel it toward the community grants entirely in future years. So
Okay.
that we don't have this other process.
So if there's 10,000 in the existing budget for Creative District, we're saying the 10, and that's 10 above previous years, then that's what we're supporting. Okay. CPAC 2250.
That's
Public Arts Commission.
It's increasing honorarium for artists.
okay.
I don't have a problem with that one.
Okay, that.
Okay, Heather, raise your hand if, and Erica will keep monitoring it for me.
I have a really good view.
Can't see that far.
$30,000 for an ATV. Eric, Kevin, you want to speak to that?
Kevin's
I
personal.
can, and this would not be a general fund expenditure because it's specifically related to the water fund. The short version of this is we've been using an access to get to PRV3 that we don't have any. We've been asked to stop using it and use the existing access that we have, which comes down the pipeline. In the summertime, we can access that okay with a pickup truck, but in the wintertime, it's going to be impossible to get down there and get turned around and get back up out of there with a pickup. So this vehicle would be used specifically at Nettle Creek back and forth to the PRV that's down there.
I support that. I mean, coming out of the water wastewater fund, it seems like that fund is well-funded and exists to support its own infrastructure. And if that's deemed necessary to support its own infrastructure, I'm for it.
And I will point out, this is not intended to be a toy. It's intended for us to be able to get personnel down there when we need to, regardless of the weather, hence the tracks.
There were two more things, and we're not done with the list yet, but on my list, someone also mentioned a comp plan allowance for next year. Could be a transportation master plan or whatever. And then additional wage increase above what staff is proposing. So going down the list, there's the electric mower Erica wants, but we are buying an ATV.
Is it electric?
I like us taking, just because I've taken my lumps with RAFTA to, you want to be cutting edge with some things, but you also want to learn before you leap. And I like the fact that we're buying some smaller equipment that's electric before we have to completely, if we didn't have to get rid of the other mower, it might be okay, but we're going out there on a limb, spend a lot of money.
No, yeah, I just wanted to raise it.
We can put it in the year after.
Right, we can do that.
And if we don't do that, we don't need to buy some big mower replacement. Is that what you're saying?
Right. We already have in the budget to replace our smaller equipment with electric stuff.
And we don't need to replace some certain mower this year. No. Then yeah, I'd wait till we need to replace it. I agree. That's a great idea.
We might give up grant funding if we wait, but
If it's at the end of its life, then grant funding is not available, but
Oh.
It's kind of a
And it's
cash
just
for
that-
clunkers.
well, and I think, I mean, it doesn't have to be for 2022, but I do think that it's one of those pieces of equipment that everybody hears and sees and bikes by, and it's incredibly loud, and your staff, are having headphones on or whatever, noise canceling things on while they're running it. So it's kind of one of those cool demonstration vehicles that people see all the time, and it wouldn't be the loud mower. But I think there's other entities that could also demonstrate it as well. I'm not going to fall on my sword over a mower.
Okay.
Next year I will, though.
Giving us advance warning.
Is advocating that we double our sidewalk improvement budget by adding another 25,000 to the budget. So we've been historically doing 25 grand a year.
That's timely. I met today with Nikki Delson from Carbondale Friendly Communities Initiative and with Matt Warwick from the Bike Ped Trails Commission, just to follow up on all the things that CAFKE presented to us a couple weeks ago. And one of the things that they're going to do is a walking audit and identification of all the trouble spots, and then forward recommendations on to Kevin on where to focus some repair. And I think it'll exceed 25,000. So I agree. I think that this is a good year to do that. And we've got a citizen group ready to say, here's where to put that money to best use.
There she is, Cameron.
Anybody?
He
There
just
she
said
is.
you disappeared.
Whoa, that was crazy.
And then I really.
Is there anybody who doesn't agree adding another 25 grand into sidewalk repair? Great.
I'll trade my mower for sidewalks.
Just this year.
Housing. It sounds like we do have, you were proposing 100,000, got it.
That's in the budget.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Did you hear that, Heather? So we have 100, yeah, you asked for that clarification. So we good with that?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
great.
And then the last two were those two I just mentioned, comp plan allowance and extra wage increase. Anybody? Erica saying, yeah,
Yes.
I think, and the comp plan allowance, was that you, Ben, talking about the transportation master plan, or was that you, Heather?
Oh, I think he was talking about the plan, and then I said, should we just add a bucket of money?
Yeah.
Just in case.
I mean, it just seems like that's going to be, I think that their transportation recommendation is going to be do a transportation plan, which is kind of disappointing. The plan that
Streets
recommends
master
another plan.
I mean, yeah, I could see any number of strategies that come out of that then have to be prioritized, but some or all are gonna have some price tag to them.
Anybody opposed to that or want to suggest a number?
25,000.
Do I hear 26?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's reasonable. I was going to say 30, but I think something in that range where we're not
Yeah, I
shooting
mean-
for the moon and it's just.
We're just earmarking money so that there's something there. If we decide at a later date we need 30, then we can adjust it. If it's less, we can adjust it. We're just asking to earmark the 25.
Last one, extra wage increase allowance.
And that is not in your budget, correct?
Right now, we have 5% for those under 67 and 3% for those over.
I would stick with that.
Yeah.
We can
I
always,
agree.
if sales tax does better than we think, we can reevaluate after Q1.
And that's a
That
pretty,
mid-year bump was.
right. And this is an increase over that mid-year bump. So it's pretty significant, pretty close in paychecks. So 6 months later, you get another bump.
How's that sound?
Lots of good direction, and I want to remind you, since someone brought up getting more information on the budget out there, that we have purchased a platform for our budget to be on our website, and it will be interactive. So
Cool.
actually, I think that's probably a good approach rather than paper being handed out.
Mhm.
So
Cool.
that hopefully will be online January 1st. So
Okay.
it'll be good. So I have direction and you'll have your
Great.
proposed budget October 12th.
Thank you. Getting this information in advance. So
It's been a challenge.
that. Okay. Moving on to item number 10, 8th Street. Kevin, take it away.
So at the April 20th meeting, the board requested that we do a check-in before we finalize plans for 8th Street. Couple of the things that were brought up is, once we see what the 6-foot sidewalks look like and the impacts those have, do we want to talk about making them wider, looking at impacts of trees and other things that are in the right of way. So I put some plans in the packet. Those plans do include what the board directed as far as 10-foot driving lanes, 8-foot parking lanes, 6 foot attached in most areas, sidewalks. And when I say in most areas, I don't mean it gets less than 6 feet. I just mean that some places it's detached and not attached. Bulb outs for traffic calming and tree protection, as well as a raised pedestrian crossing at the Rio Grande Trail. RAFTA has reviewed this preliminarily and they are okay with the general design of that as far as necking it down to 20 feet and doing the raised crossing, realigning it a little bit so it's more crossing at a right angle. So, what I'm really looking for is the board's reaction, any direction you want to give. There's a few areas that are impacted as far as encroachments in the right of way that would have to be moved to just do the 6-foot sidewalks. My personal opinion is I would not try to go any larger than that based on what I'm seeing on these plans. I think you're just going to exponentially increase the impacts along the road. So, yeah, questions, thoughts?
Yeah, so specifically tonight, you were asking for guidance of, are we aware of these encroachments? Should we proceed as we gave guidance whenever it was earlier this year?
And also, if we're going to proceed, I think the kind of elephant in the room question that's been brought up in the past is when we run into areas with encroachments in them, who's going to pay for the removal and replacement of those encroachments? I think that's going to be an important piece as we move forward, talking to folks individually. How does the board want to handle that?
And one encroachment is a big tree too, right?
There's fences, a few trees. I would recommend that on the tree question, you allow the tree board to weigh in on those. I mean, that's kind of what they do. I can tell you the efforts were made to protect the non-elm trees more than the elm trees.
Okay. Everybody completely understand all these engineered drawings?
Well, that's kind of my general question. These are hard to follow for somebody who's not in the profession. And I mean, I wondered if Kevin wanted to highlight any things that you hope are jumping out at us that we're noticing. I mean, even moving from the first sheet to the last, like I see Rio Grande Trail on the first one, and then I see it a couple later and I see it a couple later. And I know that there was that whole thing about the siphon or whatever you call it, where the ditch goes under. It looks like we were able to work around that. I just wonder if there's a few highlights that you'd like to hit, where you'd like input, or where you feel like either something was successful in negotiating something that we thought would be a real problem, like that siphon, or where it was like, no, we really got to do a big impact here and remove a bunch of stuff.
I think to best see those impacts, you want to look at page 9 and 10 of the plans, which would be.
Okay, sheet 9 and 10. Okay.
157. Yeah. I happened to be there. Oh, there I am.
So.
Can you orient us there on page 9? Like, is that, so that's the Rio Grande Trail on the top, north is to the right, it looks like.
Correct, and then that would match there's 2 frames in that picture. So if you go all the way down the top one that shows the Rio Grande, and then you drop down and go back to the left, that's a continuation of it.
Going north from the Rio Grande Trail.
Yep. And so, there's some highlighted things on this sheet, remove bushes, remove pillars and gates, fences, trees. I guess the thing that I would point out is that the vast majority of the impacts to whether it's fences or trees or bushes is basically from the Rio Grande Trail, maybe halfway down. And then you don't see a lot of removals other than existing sidewalks or concrete pavement, things of that nature.
That's from the Rio Grande Trail headed north.
Yep.
And does this plan encompass anything headed south? That was a big question we had, was how far south to go.
It basically stops at the southern side of the Rio Grande right of way.
Heather.
Kevin, on the essentially the cover page, the project location has this extended Colorado. That is not the case. This is a set of big bid documents that would be from the Rio Grande to Village.
Right.
So we should probably.
Mhm.
On the cross sections.
What sheet are you on?
153 of our packet.
Okay.
So it's the typical section details.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about the sort of choice of the, valley pan curb decision versus maybe some other that had like more similar to what's out there, right? With like, that's almost a roll curb
So
design, right? And like nearly 3 feet. So I guess when we left with bike ped trail and then the conversation here, one of the things we sort of said as a group was, let's say from the low point of the valley pan to valley pan on either side, was to not make the situation any worse in terms of like road width.
Mhm.
And so this is now, I think, if you look at just the bottom of the valley pan to valley pan, we are increasing the flat portion of the road, right?
no, this would still be shrinking the road down. Part of the parking, and I'll verify this, but there was never an intent to do what you just said. It was that the 8 feet of parking would basically be from that break in the valley pan. Out 8 feet, you'd have a 10-foot lane, another 10-foot lane, and then so 36 feet kind of face to face a curb.
Okay. I mean, it seems like with 3 feet on either side, and granted that goes to the back of the curb, I guess I'm just still maybe confused on how that, it'd be great to see how this relates to, all we have is the label that says existing concrete pavement. It doesn't really show necessarily where that exists right now. So I'll leave it at that. You're gonna probably hear from some other people just sort of on how this cross section relates to the existing, I guess. And so it'd be good to see some clearer depiction of
So we left, so just for orientation, the center line is still the center line.
Yep.
And we're coming in from each side.
This, the cross section you're looking at, section 1, just round it and call it 26 feet. And if we have 8 feet for parking, seems like we're making it more narrow. Or we would want another 2 feet. So it didn't strike me as that we were increasing it.
Yeah, I guess it's pretty hard to tell.
Okay.
If you're looking at typical section number 2, you can see that they're calling for a 10-foot driving lane. And then it shows the edge line at that 10-foot mark from center line. Then you go over 6 feet and another 2 of that 2.92, which is the overall width ish, is the parking.
I see.
It's almost a foot wide curb detail.
You know, again, there's probably a silly thing.
See what I'm saying? That valley pan plus curve is almost 3 feet wide.
That makes sense. There's 2 feet of that is considered parking. Then you've got 0.96 feet to do a curb. I don't know. I don't know my curb exact dimensions, but that sounds reasonable to me. Whereas 3 feet didn't. But I see that the 2 feet of that is included in the parking width, so.
To Heather's point, is there a reason why we're going with this curb design over a traditional?
Like a vertical curb that's along the portions of the west side of that. Yes, and that has to do with we want to make the sidewalk as accessible as we can. And if you have the attached sidewalk with a vertical curb, then your sidewalk's going to dip through each driveway and twist. Where if we use this type of curb, it's going to be a flat cross section.
Oh, so this is going in front of everyone's house, just like this.
Yep.
So I drive into my driveway, I'm mounting that curb into my driveway.
That's why we went with the mountable curb, is because you can then keep the sidewalk at a consistent
Not
cross
doing
slope.
that.
And the alternate example would be what's on the east side and how that sidewalk goes up and down through driveways.
Can you tell me where you used typical section 3? Because I wasn't super clear on where that would have been used. That's the funky brick paver thing.
Let's see. I gotta get back there again. The iPod disagreed with me.
I wonder if that's the bulb outs, the curb extensions at the intersections. It looks like the brick pavers.
Typical 2, it still says typical 2.
I'll continue to look for that, Heather.
Okay.
What page are you on, Heather?
Oh, those same cross sections that were on 153, 153, and there's a typical section 3 that has like detached sidewalk, 3 foot C and G, which I don't know.
Oh,
For the curb and gutter, oh, it's the separated curb and gutter, and then brick pavers. I don't, that's a weird cross section, and I wasn't sure where that was used.
I think it's matching 460 on page number 10. In the corner in the top.
It's the removal plan, but.
I think that would be at the bulb out locations.
Yeah, okay.
Because you can see it's just 10-foot driving lanes through there.
So the brick is bulbing out and then the curb and gutter is staying steady in a straight flow line.
Right.
Cool. Bulb outs around the big trees, I thought was really unique.
Other questions of Kevin? Okay, are folks here wanting to speak? Just curious. Two, well, hold on just 1 second. I just want to kind of gauge how many people, so at least two people here want to speak. Okay, any other questions before we let the public speak? Okay, go ahead, Holly. Yeah. And if you would just give us your name so we know.
Holly Buell, and
I'm sorry, what is it?
Holly Buell. And I know I've talked with each of you guys before. And I'm just here to remind you guys that we collected 160 plus signatures asking for a narrower street. And this doesn't really narrow it. It keeps it pretty much the same. We want to see something that addresses the speeding issue on 8th Street, which is a pretty big issue. I'm wondering if we could do something with the gutters and do something slightly narrower with the gutters. It doesn't need to be necessarily 3 feet. Maybe we can do something that's 12 inches or 18 inches, and it can still be a drive-on gutter. But a 3-foot gutter width feels really big, in my opinion. I don't think I've ever seen that big of a gutter that's, that's that big. So I just wanted to remind you guys that, members of our community, my neighbors, we really wanted to see a 34-foot wide street from the edge of the gutter to the edge of the gutter.
Thank you, Holly.
Thanks.
Heather McDonald, it's MAC. So yeah, we were talking about the gutter wise. Where is that, like a standard roll gutter, the 2 feet with the 11 inches rolled one? Because I was wondering where you got that, because I see like a quick Google search that you can do like 1-foot gutters. So I mean, I wonder if we could do that, or if you're gonna have to keep that 2 feet, can we like narrow down the parking part to about 5 feet instead of 6 feet? So we have like 7 feet. I mean, is 8 feet really excessive for a parking space too? When you have a 10-foot right away?
Thank you, Heather.
Yep.
This isn't a work session, so I apologize, but we understand the intent.
Can I just say one thing?
Yes, go for it.
Hey, guys, I'm so quick.
Just give us your names.
Oh, well, I think most of you guys know me anyways. Hey, I'm Rose Rosello, and I just want to say thank you guys so much for your time. If you have 5 minutes to go back and look at those other meetings of all the words, or think back to all the meetings that we've had in the street. I'm a speeder and I've sped on that street myself, and it definitely does call for going pretty fast. So if we can get it a little more narrow, I agree with that. Gutters smaller, also agree with that. If there's 160 people that agree with what Holly and Heather are saying, I'm on some other councils here in town, or commissions, whatever you want to call it, but I know that I love to make the town happy and the people happy, and that's why I'm a part of this town. And so if that's what the people in that area really want, then let's go back and take a peek at what the people in that area really want. Like, I have an opinion, that's why I'm on these boards, but they're the ones that are gonna have to live with it and do it. So I hope you guys have a minute to go back and look at what they were really asking for and try to mesh the plans to keep everyone happy, because that's my jam. So thank you, Rose Rosello, 2 S's, 2 L's, 2 O's.
Thanks, Rose.
Yep.
Right, I had to give up making everybody happy a long time ago. So.
Nope, still trying.
Bowden had a comment.
We were talking about how the police department just got that new speed thing. What if we put it on 8th Street?
That's a great idea. My guess is as soon as it's operable, that will be one of its first
Oh, you wanna-
destinations.
First priority.
Yeah. Good idea. Okay, anyone else from the public? Jolene's. Okay, thank you.
Very, very quick.
Okay, go for it, Holly.
Sorry, just one more quick thing. I think the plans that we're going forward with are good. I really like the bump outs around some of the trees. I like the bump outs that are in the middle of the block. I think we're on the right path. I would just like to see them narrowed up a little bit. If we narrow up that sidewalk a little bit too, I think 6 feet for a sidewalk is a little excessive. I know that Kafke would like to get their tricycles up and down the sidewalk, and that's why they were pushing for the wider sidewalks. But we could save a lot of trees if we just inched it in just a little bit, and that's all we're really asking for is just a couple feet. So, thanks.
Erica.
I was gonna say, thank you for saying that, because I was gonna say, I feel like this actually does address a lot of what the neighbors were asking for. I mean, I know all of us came and met with you individually. And so at first it sounded like this is nothing like we guys talked about, and the petition really, hold on, I am talking.
Holly, this is not a conversation anymore.
In that moment, when that petition was circulated, was when we were looking at 2 different plans that included, either a 9-foot bike path or moving, getting rid of parking completely. And so I think right now we're literally talking about 12 inches, which I'm not saying that's not a big deal, but I think the bulb outs, that is a proven way that cities deal with speeding. And so that is one way. And so but if we don't narrow the street another foot, we are definitely working on addressing speeding on that street. So thank you for chiming in and saying, this feels like we're on the right path, because this is definitely what I heard when I met with you guys on the neighborhood. And I think one of our things that Kevin is trying to find out, which I think your neighborhood would be very interested in, is who's going to help pick up the costs for these impacts. Because even if we get rid of it by a foot, there's still going to be impacts to the neighbors. And I think that we're probably going to have to do some more neighborhood meetings and talk to, the neighbors to figure out that next step.
I don't know about that, but.
Yeah, we may not have to, but.
Yeah. Other thoughts on the design, questions? Heather?
Yeah, I mean, it's just so hard, right? We're literally in Newcastle, we're having this conversation. In the city of Gunnison, we're having this conversation. And this push to delegitimize, deprioritize the vehicle. And that the primary way to do that right now is to talk about narrower streets. And, generally, like, citizens are behind it. It really tends to be this, I think, a little bit more like institutional pushback, right? Public safety gets worried. Can I still get down the street? Public works, can we do everything we need to do in the street and all of those things? And so it's just so hard, because I won't vote for less than a 6-foot sidewalk. Like, I mean, that's just a double wide stroller, even if it's not tricycles, right? And then somebody passing you in the other direction. So we advocate for that, because that's prioritizing all of our alternative modes. I still think there's room to give. And it seems like 6 inches in, taking them to even 9 or 9.5 feet in the travel lane, it seems like nothing, but like, it can make a big difference. It can make a big difference in some of our costs. It can make a big difference in, I don't see anywhere where it means things don't get relocated, because most of them are just encroachments, period. And you're going to want to relocate them. But I don't know, it's so hard because it seems so trivial, but we could make a huge statement as this moves forward, hopefully into a transportation plan, master streets plan, some of those things. This is the first biggest statement we're going to make as to what we're prioritizing and what we're consciously deprioritizing.
Well, when I think about that, I mean, I think our goals are the same, right?
I think so.
We all want safer streets. I ride down 8th Street a lot on my bike. And so when I think about it, and I understand the goal of deprioritizing vehicles, but the reality of it is a corridor. It's not, I don't know all our terms, but it's not you know, a small street. I should know this, but I don't.
Do we have terms? We don't have, we don't.
Circulators, there's collectors, there's, you know, all these terms.
We've talked about that at different levels, but
Yeah.
I mean, whether we have them or not.
No, I know that there are terms like that. We don't actually have any, so
Okay.
that's,
But
it's hard.
as a bike rider, and I, you know, I drive that a lot too. I think there's, if we narrow this corridor down too much, for me, it makes it less safe for other users, like a biker. So to me, this is the happy medium for the street.
Agree to disagree.
I just want to say.
Heather, what are you proposing then, I guess?
I think there'd be a middle ground if we literally just went to 9.5-foot travel lanes.
Okay, right. That's what I wanted to hear, was like, so what number do you want reduced?
Take out the foot, it would get us even further towards, you know, kind of that deprioritizing.
And we had a pretty extensive discussion about all these widths before that. We looked at a lot of different things, and I agree, like, we have the same goals. I'm a big fan of narrow streets. But Kevin, when you brought us, I don't know if you can remember off the top of your head, but when you brought us other street widths in town, and we were kind of thinking of this as similar to Main Street in a lot of ways. I want to say Main Street has 11-foot travel lanes or something like that. Do you remember?
that's my recollection.
And I felt like that was kind of the feel we were going for, and we're a foot below that. But the same kind of deal with bulb outs, 6-foot sidewalks attached on both sides, parking on both sides. But that's the kind of feel we were going for. So we're already a foot less than that in each direction. And I think this is a pretty happy medium. I mean, I think that, you know, the thing about the gutters, that 2 feet of it is basically just flat surface that's incorporated into the 8-foot parking lane. So that makes sense to me.
I think you guys are gonna be shocked at how wide it feels once done. Once done.
Once done.
Um,
It's the same as current driving lane widths, or it's less than current?
This is less than what it is now.
What is it currently?
I want to say it was face to face a curb 38 feet before, and we shrunk it down.
This is
a
36.
Foot each side, basically. And, you know, to the point of the curbs, we can look at different curbs. We looked at this from a drainage perspective too. And it's the whole thing slopes to the north, but not very much. And so what we're trying to do is contain that drainage in the concrete section and not having it run over the joint in the asphalt where it can get down in there. So, you know, there's some of that drainage thought going into this as well.
Well, and the width of the dimension of the curb and gutter is somewhat irrelevant because someone's still going to park in the seam. It's just a matter, like you said, where that seam is between concrete and asphalt.
And making sure that the face of the curb, to the point of, you know, details, what we were shooting for is 36 feet face to face. Well, we can make sure that that's in the final design, so it's not 36.3 or whatever that would be. You know, the other consideration, and I don't remember who brought it up when we were discussing it. You know, we're going to stripe these parking lanes as well, which is different than where it is now. So you'll have a longitudinal line between the bulb outs, more clearly defining the driving lane. Doesn't stop a car, and you know, you can drive across striping, but it's going to be more defined than it is now.
So it's 8:33. We're supposed to be starting our executive session. And we're providing general guidance. Kevin, is there anything that you?
I think we have to talk about the cost thing.
Right, but I assume Heather's question is something you definitely want guidance on. So is there anybody who thinks that we should consider changing the plans per Heather's recommendation? Okay, so let's talk about the cost. You mean the cost of
Yeah, in the memo.
remove and replacement? Okay,
So,
will you?
yes, like
will you
certain
disclose-
plans.
Will you make it just,
Oh, sure.
yeah, I think that's important, because it does what we're about to talk, yeah.
Absolutely. So I live at 435 North 8th. You saw my name on the plans. So I have a financial consideration, I guess, in this discussion.
So as
So I don't
always,
know
it's-
if I should recuse or not.
the board feel like there's a financial conflict.
It's okay to say yes. Some of you were looking at it like,
I do I want your expertise on the road design, but when it comes to whether we bear the cost or we ask, I do think that
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
conflict there.
It's too.
okay, that makes sense. Can I just sit here and not talk, or do you want me to like
I'm afraid when you recuse, you gotta,
actually bolt?
yeah, yeah. Sorry, Heather. Does the board agree with that? Anybody?
I think that makes sense. I mean,
Yeah. Because we've had you guys step out just for being on the board, so for nonprofits that we give money to.
Okay, so the question is,
Thanks again, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.
if I remember, Kevin, you say like, this hasn't really been a big issue, so we don't have a lot of precedent to go on.
Mhm.
But there are things that, there are plenty of encroachments. They are exactly that. They're an encroachment. Someone built something outside of their property line. So the question is, do we bear any responsibility to remove and replace? Kevin, anything to add to that?
maybe just some examples for us to talk about, not of specific people or properties, but the types of things that we're talking about and what remove and replace might mean. That would help.
So what we're talking about in this instance would be some of those items on sheet 9 and 10 where it says this needs to be removed and relocated.
Mhm.
We're not talking about trees, we're talking about fences and other things like that. It wouldn't be mailboxes. Mailboxes are a pretty standard thing that you just move around. I mean, people need to get their mail, but it's more when
I see.
fences and that sort of stuff really is what we're talking about here. It's not utilities. Any utility in our right of way needs to move when we do a project like this at their cost. Yes.
So it's mostly fences.
And some
And
pillars,
Appurtenances, 2 fences, gates, things of that
gates,
nature.
pillars. That's what I'm seeing. Yeah.
You guys probably know how I feel on this, but I feel like this is pretty cut and dry to me. That if there's an encroachment, it's because someone chose to put something outside their property. I have this situation in my house where I chose to build like small retaining walls on town property, and I know if the town ever wanted to do anything about it, that's on my dime.
Mhm.
And to do otherwise is such a huge precedent.
Any fence built outside the property line would mean that they didn't have a proper permit to do it, I would think, because that's the purpose of that permit, is to get it on the right line.
Right, which
Maybe, maybe not. I
Okay.
mean, people don't move their fences a lot and
Well-
some of those could be historic, and we've actually done right-of-way leases on some fences where we go, okay, but we'll do a right-of-way lease.
I will say that the town called out a send ago that we located a fence erroneously in the right of way. And John Plano said, you guys gotta move that fence. And we moved it. It was all on our dime.
But yeah,
So-
I think I agree with you. I guess my only question would be if somebody doesn't want to remove or relocate it, would the town remove it and just not relocate it? And then that wouldn't cost them anything? Or would we sort of stop and wait for them?
It would still cost something because contractors aren't gonna do removals for free, but it would reduce that cost.
Be open to something along those lines, that we could help remove something. but we're not gonna rebuild it for you. And if you decide you can't afford it, then we're not putting you at a hardship. You just don't have a front fence anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we really have a choice but to do what you're talking about. And I would hate for us to do more damage than the owner would do themselves by removing it, but that's a risk.
That's also their choice.
Yeah, yeah. So I would hate to create that confrontation, but that might be our only choice.
And Kevin, none of these fences or any of the, fences or anything that's in the right of way would be solved by narrowing the roadway in any way.
Not to any large degree. I mean, I think in the most part, if you look with that attached sidewalk, you have some clearance to the right of way line still. I don't know that we'd want a scenario where you built right up to the edge of a fence and had a fence right along the sidewalk.
Okay.
Yeah, it kind of makes a sidewalk less usable.
Bowden, you're saying, what was the thumbs up?
It was just like, I agree, I don't.
Okay. It's feedback you give. This is gonna be great.
More than our last student trustee in the whole year. So we appreciate it.
Okay. Am I hearing anybody feel differently?
No.
Okay.
And one other, I mean, besides fences and mailboxes, there's nothing else that's like major.
Nothing that jumped out at me other than trees and bushes. I mean, there are gonna be impacts to those.
Sure.
But some of that's unavoidable. And like I said, I would recommend highly that if you guys are okay kind of moving forward from tonight, we get this back to the tree board to get their 2 cents on how we're handling it.
And are there gonna be any things left in sort of the middle of the sidewalk, the way that on South 8th Street right now, we've got mailboxes in the middle of the sidewalk. On Second Street, we've got power poles and guy lines in the middle of the sidewalk. Are we gonna have anything sort of in the concrete? It looks like we're not.
No,
Okay.
my goal would be not to do that. And we're gonna have to take a little bit harder look at some of the mailboxes. We talked about potentially, if we can't make a mailbox work in a certain area, looking at those bulb outs as a way that we could use it as kind of a collective, I'm not talking about putting in the boxes with keys, but just move.
Cluster.
Yeah.
2 or 3 together or something.
Marty.
Kevin, with this provides enough width for emergency vehicles?
As far as the 10-foot driving lanes?
Yeah.
Yeah. The discussion we had based on my recollection is I pushed back fairly hard on going less than 10 feet. And a lot of that was based on the fact that this could, and portions of 8th Street have served as a detour for Highway 133. It's the only parallel road there is.
Right, and access to Heritage Park just to get to the highway.
And for emergency vehicles and just to get people through town if we have to be in that scenario.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more hands. Disagreement? Kevin, you feel like you have the direction you need? Okay, thank you all. And now we're gonna move to an executive session. I'll wait till Kathy gives me the clue before we make a motion.
Well, you're gonna do the motion? You can go with the motion to go into the executive.
I'll make a
session.
motion to go into executive session.
Second.
Motion by Marty, seconded by Luis. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say no. Motion passes. And Bowden, I wish Mark was here.
I'm here.
There you are.
I'd like a little more time to think if you're gonna consider including Doug, but my initial reaction would be not to because he's not.
No, I don't.
So Bowden, an executive session